If you find yourself in Los Angeles, well, West Hollywood to be precise, and you're looking for a place to stay, then why not try the Holloway Motel? An iconic motel from a bygone era located just off Santa Monica Boulevard and virtually opposite Barney's Beanery. Holloway Motel is a classic that has stood proudly on Route 66 since the 1940s, and this is the place that members of the UK rock band Leader of Down used to stay while in town, and visited Lemmy from Motorhead. Let's hear from Tim Atkinson from the band, who stayed there so often and it had such an effect on him that he wrote a song about it, which is featured on their second album entitled The Screwtape Letters.
Holloway Motel, stay there, you won't regret it, my own private cell for life.
The motel is on what was and what still is Route 66, and it's one of the last motels in West Hollywood on Route 66. It's old, it's got history. It was set up to allow affordable accommodation to travellers coming into Hollywood. Now, at times, I felt I almost lived at the Holloway Motel. We were there so often and for so long. It all started off when Steve Clark, our original drummer from Leader of Down, used to go over to the NAMM show and different things in LA. And then when we got together and we formed a band, I used to go over to the NAMM show as well, and we ended up staying at Holloway Motel. And we'd always go over for a couple of weeks and other little bits and pieces we were doing in Hollywood. And then as we started working on the record, which was Cascade into Chaos, and talking to Lemmy about recording the track which became Paradise Turned into Dust, we'd be over there a lot. Now, you might think when I say we'd be over there a lot, you're just thinking, oh, what's he talking about? Let me tell you. There was one year, we'd got to the middle of May, and I'd been in the Holloway Motel more than I'd been in my own house. We stayed there so long and went so many times over such a number of years that the receptionist come manager, we saw her transition from a man to a woman through the whole operation, the whole thing. That's how long we were going. So, we miss you, Erica. Hope you're doing all right. We used to have parties in our room with the staff. They'd bring drinks up, we'd get drinks and we'd arrange things. We'd all sit in our room having a drink. That's how well we got to know everyone.
Holloway Motel, stay there, you won't regret it, my own private cell for life.
So, we were there a long time. Now, this was happening over 5, maybe 6 years. When Wurzel was still alive, we were talking to Lemmy about doing it, and quite often I'd go over to Hollywood, meet up with Lemmy in the Rainbow and chat about it and various other things. And then when Wurzel sadly passed away, we obviously had to really get this done. Lemmy wanted to do it, and he'd said, come over and we'll talk about it. So over we went. And then, of course, there'd be other things getting in the way. Motorhead would be doing something and we'd be there waiting for Lemmy to come back. And it went on and on and on and on and on and on. And Lemmy, obviously true to his word and in the most wonderful way possible, eventually recorded the song. But a lot happened before that.
It's been a long time coming. Holloway Motel, stay there, you won't regret it, my own private cell for life. Holloway Motel.
So as the days became nights, became weeks and became months, you can imagine the state that our room was getting in. The maid had to come up every day to remove beer bottles from outside because the other residents were complaining about the mess that was coming out onto the landing. We'd lost the bathroom window at one point. It had fallen down into the alleyway just behind the motel, but more about that in a second. We had no washing facilities, so we had to go to laundrettes and things, which is fine, but of course when you're there for 3 months it was adding up, the cost was adding up. So I went out for a walk one day and I came back, and outside along the railings all the way across the first floor of the motel were probably about 25 pairs of tiny little black pants. And as I came into the parking lot of the motel, I thought, oh no, because I knew what they were and whose they were. They were, of course, Steve, our original drummers. He'd been washing them all out in the sink, but he decided to dry them in front of everybody else's room all across the first floor of the motel. Well, I barely got in the room and the staff were there saying they'd had multiple complaints from everyone else, understandably. So they had to make a special arrangement that the lovely maid who worked there would do all our washing for us to avoid any further embarrassment with the other residents. Our room was getting in such a mess. They came and cleaned, but a lot of the time I don't think they'd venture in, and it was beginning to look a little bit like a scene from an old BBC television programme called Tenko, which was about a prisoner of war camp. So this is really what our life was like for quite a while. And you'd then find, after we'd met up with Lemmy and everything, you'd say, right, okay, I can do it in 6 months' time. So we'd been there for however long that particular trip was, and then went back home again. So this used to happen periodically throughout the year. We'd be there for quite a few weeks. We'd try and tie it in with other stuff we were doing for the band or other things we had to do privately, music-wise, in LA. So one year, we were there, and we'd quite often be in the same room. So you knew it, we knew the staff, we knew the owner, we knew one of the owner's little dog that used to come round. The dog would come running up to it, didn't like anyone else because it was quite shy, but it knew us, even if we hadn't been there for a couple of months. And there was one time I went home, 4 days later I went back again. So I flew back to England and went back again. There were so many things like that, but there was one night I'll always remember. I was lying in bed, Steve was in his bed fast asleep, and I was woken by what can only be described as maybe the sounds of someone being murdered or groaning in such a way that I'd never heard anything like it. Now, I wear contact lenses, so you may have remembered me previously saying that we'd lost our bathroom window. There was just a little mesh over it, so it was open to the elements. And literally just behind Holloway Motel is a sort of 2-storey parking lot, which was literally 5 feet from our back window. And I thought, where's this sound coming from? It sounded like it was coming from the bathroom. I thought, well, surely not. So I walked into the bathroom, again, can barely see, put my head right against the mesh, and then my eyes focused, because my poor eyesight was now getting within range, and I was staring straight into the eyes from about 5 foot maximum away of a man having sex. I don't know who was more embarrassed, me or him, but I quickly went back into my room and shut the door. So if you're listening, I do apologise if I startled you in any way, but not as much as you startled me.
Barney's location between the film studios to the east and Beverly Hills to the west made the restaurant bar a popular hangout for luminaries like Clara Bow, Rita Hayworth, and Clark Gable in the golden age of Hollywood. Times changed over the decades, and unlike other more glamorous establishments, Barney's managed to change along with them, and in the 1950s became a magnet for a more bohemian crowd that included Dennis Hopper, Marlon Brando, and Jack Nicholson. More changes were in store in the 1960s as the area known as West Hollywood became a mecca for rock stars like Janis Joplin, who is said to have enjoyed the last drink of her short life at Barney's before heading back to the motel where she met her end. Hard-drinking regular Jim Morrison christened the bar by urinating on it, an act that was commemorated with a plaque. This was also the place where members of Leader of Down used to eat and drink every day for many months, so it holds a special place in Tim Atkinson's heart.
So every day, without fail, we would be in Barney's Beanery, which, if you've ever been to Barney's Beanery, It is about 65 steps from Holloway Motel. So we'd trundle over there for breakfast. We'd be back there in the evening for our dinner and whatever was going on in there. We would be in there all the time. Barney's Beanery is a very famous place. It's a bar, absolutely fantastic place. Food's great. Jim Morrison used to drink in there. Peter Falk, who was Columbo, used to be there. So much history, but it's a really cool place. So if you get a chance when you're in Los Angeles, pop down there. We'd meet up with all sorts of people. Stiff Little Fingers would be in there sometimes, all sorts of different people. And then one night we were in there, and it was a Sunday night. I think they still do. It was karaoke. And I had a few, and I was sitting on the bar stool, and this guy got up to sing Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler. All the high bits, all the low bits, one person doing it. He was trying his hardest, but I could not breathe with laughter. I nearly fell off the stool twice. I mean, literally. Steve was telling me off, saying, "Don't be stupid, you're like a little child," but I couldn't help it. And then the following day, we found out that Phil Campbell from Motel was also in the bar at the same time, just round the corner, and I didn't know he was in there. And we both had a laugh about that, and we still talk about that night sometimes, because it was one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my whole life.
Holloway Motel, stay there, you won't regret it. My own private cell for life.
So Phil was over recording Aftershock, I think, so we'd spend a lot of time with him and go down the studio and have dinner or breakfast with him whilst he was there, which was great. Phil was staying around the corner at the Posh Hotel, but of course he came over to ours, and I will never forget Phil, and we laugh about this still now, when he came in the room just flashing me a little sideward glance with his eyes about the actual state of our room, which did make me smile, because it's only sometimes, isn't it, when you have guests in there, you realise what a mess we've gotten into. So, from what you just heard, it was really only fitting that we wrote a song about it. So, that's how Holloway Motel, the song, came about. It was basically a glimpse into my memories and a bit of sort of wordplay on what happened. So, one of the lines is Total Eclipse, Hammer to Fall. Now you know what Total Eclipse is about, and someone else also did Hammer to Fall. So they are direct references to that. There's another bit which is Tell Me the Story right from the start. That came from one morning when I got a phone call from Phil Campbell, who was back home. We were joking about something, and then I had something to tell him, and in his lovely Welsh accent, he said, "Tell me the story right from the start." Sorry, Phil, if you're watching, that was my best effort. And I like that line, so right, that's going in. So I remember writing that down. I thought that's going in because that was really nice. And all the little bits, there's talks about Barney's Beanery in there, going up on the strip to see Lemmy at the Rainbow. There's bits about plates on the wall, that is number plates. They had license plates. They had a thing where if you were travelling over from the East Coast, arriving in California, you could stop off at Barney's Beanery and sort of trade in your license plate for a hot meal and a beer. So they've still got all of those going back decades on the wall there, and it's really, really interesting. So those trips inspired a lot of things, and obviously we were over there mainly to finish doing the recording with Lemmy, and it was really great that we got to spend quite a lot of time with him in the last few years of his life, which, you know, meant a lot to all of us. Now, we were down the studio with Lemmy. Obviously it was great because we spent quite a lot of time at Motorhead recording sessions, because that's when we were fitting in this work that we were doing with Lemmy, and we had a great day and evening with Lem down at the studio. all getting ready to do the recording, but we'd been chatting so much that by the time we got to about 11 o'clock, when Lemmy was sort of ready to have a go or tired, he said to Cameron Webb, "Cameron, let's do Tim and Steve stuff for Wurzel tomorrow." And Cameron said, "No, we're not in tomorrow." That was their last day. There'd been a little confusion. So we'd been over there for 8 weeks and we got the day wrong. And, you know, it's funny now, but you can imagine how crestfallen we were. I'm laughing, but it was, and Lemmy was, it was quite amusing, but we had been there for quite a long time to get to that point. But we spent some really nice time with Lemmy talking about all sorts of things. He let me try his basses out. We were going through a load of the lyrics for the Motorhead record and talking about other things, and also it was wonderful. And I wouldn't swap that for anything. But of course, it now meant we had to wait to the next time Motorhead were actually going to be either recording or Lemmy was going to be off for a decent amount of time. So, although we went back between that one and the final recording, we eventually got it done, and we're in a completely different studio this time. We were in Paramount Studios, which was probably 25 minutes drive from Holloway Motel and Barney's, where we were obviously based again. And we got it all done, and I remember talking to Lemmy, you know, "Where you're staying, that same crappy place?" I said, "That same place, Lem," which always used to bring out a smile from him and Phil Campbell. We've only got to mention Holloway Motel and Phil's face lights up. On our new record, there's a track called Cat's Eye Night.
Out they come, ice blue light is just the start of mayhem night. What I wanna say is please be careful what you do. Ha! Who and what and where the hell were you on the Cat's Eye Night?
That was written about coming back from the recording session with Lemmy for Paradise Turned Into Dust, the song that originally me and Wurzel wrote. The first thing me and Wurzel ever wrote, and then to have Lemmy on it, which is what Wurzel always wanted, finally get that realised, and Lemmy did it, was absolutely amazing. And then who'd have thought we'd have another lifetime of memories from the motel that we used to stay at, which now unfortunately never reopened after COVID, but the West Hollywood City Council have now purchased it apparently, and it's going to be a shelter for homeless people to try and get back on their feet. So rest in peace, Holloway Motel, and thank you for the memories.